The financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions. Thank you for listening to Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I'm Tim Graham of The Athletic. Not here with us again for a second straight week. We're going to have to reevaluate his F status as a Tim Graham friend. Jonah Bronstein is not joining us, my usual co-host. Maybe my former co-host. I'll have to have that discussion. But joining us this week is Mike Giardi from the NFL Network. He's been there for 3 years. Prior to that, which is where I got to know him, he was at NBC Sports Boston, and he was gracious enough to have me on before games when the Patriots and the Bills played. He's based in Boston, so it's the perfect week to have Mike on. Anything going on in Foxborough this week, Mike?
It's the little thing. This guy, Brady, you may have heard of, coming back. Yeah, we actually started this conversation last week, which was incredibly disrespectful to the Saints. And then you saw the result of the Saints-Patriots game. Maybe they were thinking ahead. I don't know. I don't know if Bill allows that to happen. But, this week is going to be crazy, absolutely crazy.
Well, I'm going to try to ask you some questions that make you think a little bit more, because I also know, just as any reporter does, that when you get in these regular season Super Bowl games, well, hell, postseason Super Bowl games too.
Yeah,
it's all the same thing, saying it over and over again. You could probably go on autopilot and give these answers. So I guess I wanted to ask you if the Patriots have learned anything in their preparation for the Saints, because they had to get ready for the Chris Hogan game. Do you think that they then can take the emotions of that and say, all right, we've already been through this. We've had Chris Hogan back. We now know what it's going to be like to have Tom Brady back.
Well, I have to tell you, Tim, you mentioned Chris Hogan, and what was very amusing to me yesterday was Bill Belichick was asked about, obviously, Brady coming back, and he started to go down the line. Well, we've had guys that have been here before come back. I mean, this is the league, right? And he mentioned Chris Hogan, and we're all like, dude, you can't go down this road. What do you do? And then, he kind of caught himself and well, I mean, obviously, Tom is a little bit different, but he did. He started to stray down that path of well, Garoppolo came back, Brissett's coming. We're like, dude, what are you doing? You can't compare any of those guys to this guy.
Bledsoe came back.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Yep.
I don't think there was as much drama there.
No. When he traded him to the Bills, when he traded Bledsoe to the Bills, that was a look. I'm not ever afraid of Drew Bledsoe. I think he made that clear. And I know there was the early Bledsoe game was one that stood out for Buffalo, but after that, it was pretty lopsided.
Is there a tangential discussion here? Maybe, is there any resentment towards Drew Bledsoe? Or how, because of, I distinctly remember when the Patriots won that first Super Bowl and Tom Brady gleefully trying to hug Drew Bledsoe and make him think hey man, we're happy. We just won this thing. And Bledsoe was you could tell he's thinking, this is my team, or this should be my team.
Yep. Of
course, we've seen how history unfolds. Tom Brady, the greatest of all time, et cetera, et cetera. But where does Bledsoe stand among Patriots fans these days?
Yeah, I don't think he gets enough respect, quite frankly, for sort of helping the Patriots become a legitimate NFL franchise. I mean, there had been blips over the course of time, but with he and Parcells together, they sort of started to build something that, made the Patriots significantly more relevant locally. I mean, they didn't sell out their home games forever and a day, right? I mean, no one really cared about them. Boston College, we're not even a college football town, but Boston College was good in the early 80s. They were far more important to football fans than the Patriots were. And then you end up with, Parcells and then Bledsoe and sort of point that thing in the right direction. I think Bledsoe had a hard time. I think he actually still has sort of a hard time with the whole way it went down, because as he said, like, I'm remembered for almost dying. And that was a bad injury, right? He was bleeding internally. There was a lot of stuff going on there, but it was like, oh, all of a sudden this fresh faced kid comes in there and starts winning football games. And, my job is over and people wanted to throw me to the side. I almost died, so I think even to this day, he does interviews where you can sort of sense from his perspective a little bit of bitterness about just how it all went down.
Is he, we could easily look it up, but two guys who follow the sport, is he the second greatest quarterback in Patriots history? I mean, I know you go back to the AFL days and stuff, but
no, I mean, people might try to people around here love Steve Grogan.
They love Steve.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at what Steve Grogan was as a passer, and I know the league was entirely different than it is now. I mean, to me, there's no comparison. I guess Grogan, the thing that people loved about Grogan is how tough he was, the neck brace, that whole thing. I mean, when you talk about Steve Grogan, that's the first thing people bring up. He wore a neck brace, like, okay, but he was just a marginal quarterback.
Drew Bledsoe did get to a Super Bowl on his own.
He
Steve
did.
Grogan was the backup when they went in 85.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry for that diversion, but that's kind of
All
what
good.
this podcast is all about, Mike. So you are based in Boston. You cover the Patriots. So you have been at every Patriots game so far this season. Your thoughts on how they measure up to the defending Super Bowl champs? Yeah. You know what? Let's kind of stay in this moment of Brady coming back. How nervous are Patriots fans that it won't go well?
Petrified, because I think the feeling was that they would beat the Saints and they'd be 2-1. And okay, if Tom comes in here and beats us, 2-2 is not bad with a rookie quarterback. Schedule starts to lighten up with Houston the following week. There's, that feeling like, okay, if we can get through this, the kid's showing promise at quarterback, we're okay. Now you lose a game that you felt like you were going to win going into it. You're 1-2, having really lost the first game to Miami as well. I think was a game they feel like they should have won. And now Tom's coming in here, and it's really hard for the Patriots offense to score. It's not hard for Tom to score. I think people are a little bit afraid of the potential that this is a complete runaway, and it's 42-14 in the fourth quarter, and you're going to see shots of the stands and, people with Brady jerseys on and, maybe anti-Patriot type vibe at that point, because there were some boos on Sunday. I mean, they're nervous right now, and I think they should be to a certain degree.
That's right, because and a great little wrinkle too, because unless the Patriots put a hurting on Tampa, the Brady fans are going to stay till the end. So at the end of the game, the crowd shots are going to be, and it's going to be that vibe of this is Brady's town. This isn't the Patriots' town. This has been Brady's town, and he can do it without Bill and that whole narrative, which he obviously can. He just won a Super Bowl. But
well, I mean, Tim, so they're since Brady has moved on, they have 3 wins against the Jets. The Patriots do. They are 5-12, I believe, against the rest of the league since Tom Brady left. And then, of course, Brady goes to Tampa, gets hot, wins a Super Bowl. It's like he's already sort of won the argument, if you will, about who was right and who was wrong in that decision. And people are starting to wonder, like, is this, you see Belichick's record before Brady, the record with Brady, and now all of a sudden the record without Brady. And it's like, well, it used to be, is it a 50-50 thing? Is it 60-40? Well, Belichick and the culture, and he's just smarter than everybody else. And now people are starting to go, no, it was Brady, and maybe it was a heavy percentage of Brady over Belichick, at least in this, this short term here of a year and change, where it hasn't gone the way people are certainly hoping it was going to go.
how much does this discussion matter, do you think, within the organization?
I think it matters quite a bit of the ownership level because of the relationship that Robert in particular had with Tom. And look, I think what people perceive on the outside is true on the inside. That Bill's not the easiest guy to work with. I think there's that famous clip at the 2009 season when the NFL Films followed the Patriots for a season, and Bill's got Robert and maybe Jonathan were in the office, Jonathan Kraft, and Bill's not even paying attention to them. And I think there's sort of that, like, Bill's on a different level. I mean, they're obviously the owners, but Bill's on a different level and isn't the easiest to be around. So yeah, I think that there's definitely, did we make a mistake? Should we not have offered him that multi-year contract in 2017, 2018 to make sure he was on our roster till he was 45? And then if you wanted to go year to year after that, go so be it. But Bill was, I think Bill played the odds, and the odds right now are somehow Thomas has bucked those odds.
Yeah, it's the outlier. You couldn't have predicted it. I guess you can look back and say it would be a little bit disingenuous to say, oh, we all should have seen this coming because it's right. Tom Brady. But the greatest of the greats fall apart at some point. Michael Jordan fell apart. Joe Montana fell apart. I mean, it happens.
No, and you're right. And I guess the one thing that you can say now is, and you keep hearing it from defensive players week after week, and you even heard from Brady earlier this year, you can't touch the quarterback anymore. It's like that. And so maybe that's the biggest shift, and maybe that's going to be the shift when people look at Aaron Rodgers or, Russell Wilson as he gets older, because he said he wants to play till after 40, that maybe if these guys can manage to avoid serious injury, that they can actually do this because their minds are sharp enough to do it. And if the body can stay healthy-ish, that they can continue to play into their 40s. And I think that was one of the things too, when I look at the sort of the Brady departure, the last 2 seasons of Brady here, he had substantial injuries that he plays with everything, right? I mean, the only thing he didn't play with was the torn ACL in the 08 season, but he had an MCL sprain that really impacted him for 6 games over the course of the 2018 season when they beat the Rams in the Super Bowl. And if you kind of go back and look at that run, what they discovered late in the year was maybe we're more of a power running team. And then when Tom had to make the throws, he was still capable of making the throws as he did in Kansas City in the AFC title game. And then in 19, he had all kinds of problems with his elbow, and that happened right around the 7-0, 8-0, and then they were a sub 500 team the rest of the year, and then bowed out in the first round of the playoffs. So I think when they look at it again, they probably felt like, hey, the odds are again starting to fall in our favor. Couldn't make it through 2018, and somehow we won a Super Bowl, and maybe we shouldn't have. And then 2019, we just completely fell apart in the second half of the season, and our quarterback physically couldn't carry us like he had in the past.
Do you think Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback now if Bill Belichick had his way? After what we've seen out of Garoppolo, or do you think they've maybe moved on from him by this point?
No, I think he would have been. I think there's a feeling in Foxborough that if Jimmy was here, that some of the stuff that you're seeing in San Francisco, some of the inconsistencies wouldn't be part of his game. I mean, and obviously there's no way of knowing that. Maybe this is just who he is, and this was how it was going to play. But they certainly had a lot invested in him, and famously after they traded him, Belichick on a conference call for about 5 minutes starts off the conference call without even being asked about, just going on and on about how Jimmy handled himself and what a good player the 49ers were getting. And, we had the best quarterback room in football, but, we had to do something at this point. So I think there was still interest in bringing him back this offseason. And San Francisco didn't seem to want to budge, or at least if they were going to budge, it was going to have to be a high price that the Patriots weren't willing to pay. So, yeah, I think they look at Jimmy as the one that got away.
So we can go ahead and rule the Jets out of the AFC conversation rather safely. The Bills beat the Dolphins 35-0 2 weeks ago, and the Bills looked really good on Sunday against Washington football team. Where do you think the division stands with your knowledge on the Patriots? You've seen the Dolphins, Jets too, right?
Yep. Tim, I think I went into this feeling like the Bills were still the class of the division when the season started, but that maybe Miami and New England had closed the gap some, but not enough to overtake them. And after 3 weeks, I think the gap is as wide as it was last year. I mean, obviously, I looked at the Miami situation and said, can Tua make the leap? Can Tua be a top 5 quarterback pick and go from in his rookie year to, okay, now I've had a full year to train, I'm healthier, and I can do this thing. And he, even in beating the Patriots in week 1, he didn't do anything for me. I hate writing off quarterbacks this early. It's become the thing that we do now. And I still don't want to put the nail in his coffin as a player, because Buffalo is the perfect example. If you did that, if we were treating Josh Allen like we've been treating all these quarterbacks lately, then Josh is somewhere else. And maybe he's having great success, or maybe he's a journeyman quarterback at this point, but staying in Buffalo and Buffalo staying with him has paid big dividends. And for the Patriots,
well, real quick,
yeah.
Didn't the Dolphins kind of put the nail in Tua's coffin when they were openly flirting, or really not doing any kind of defense when the reports were out that Deshaun Watson was on his way, or that they were trying to get him? And they just kind of passive aggressively dealt with that. And it kind of, I mean, that's still hanging there.
Yeah. It's fair. It's absolutely fair. I would just say when it comes to Watson, I think there are 25, 26 teams that should have called about him, obviously prior to now what we know with all the stuff that's going on off the field, because he's that talented a guy. And he's, 25? I mean, you're talking about the ability to acquire a franchise quarterback who you already know is good. Like, now he's played in the NFL, he's played at a high level, and we could have him for the next 10 years. That makes a lot of sense to me. But yeah, they clearly were lukewarm on Tua after last year. And to your point, even the public proclamations of Tua's our guy they fell flat. It just, I don't know. It wasn't over the top. I know there was a report right before the first game that Flores had a meeting with his team, and he's like, Tua's our guy. And it was like, yeah, you're probably about 6 months too late with this story for your team, who all know, like, yeah, if the Deshaun thing clears up, we'd probably rather have Deshaun. So
these players are on social media. They watch the NFL Network. They know what's being said.
Yeah,
and they know what's not being knocked down.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've seen how in other places where people will get on they'll pound the podium and say, no, this isn't it. And at least, whether it's true or not, they're at least saying, well, look, my guy's out there, he's defending whatever, my player, my guy. And in that case, everything was quiet. So yeah, I think it would be hard if I was Will Fuller or Preston Williams or Devontae Parker to think like, yeah, Tua is the long-term answer here, when they continue to flirt with the idea of Deshaun Watson and continue to have little leaks, like the owner wants Watson. I mean, these things keep popping up every couple of weeks.
I derailed you there from your closing thoughts on the AFC East.
So like I said, I think the Dolphins, they look like they have a quarterback problem, and that's not going to allow you to overtake Buffalo. And with the Patriots, I'm a little surprised at how this has gone thus far. I thought, one of the big things to me, well, two big things. One, they're not protecting the quarterback at all. And as I sit there and watch back the games, and I say, okay, there's a couple throws, there's a couple times where Jones gets hit, where it's the quarterback's fault. He doesn't make he's very quick with his processing, but hey, you fooled him a little bit. He comes off his first read. Yeah, exactly. What do you expect from a rookie, right? To me, the bigger thing is how the defense, when they have to make a stop, they can't make a stop. Miami, they went through the offseason. They said, we're not going to get run on like we did last year. They were a bottom 5 defense against the run last year, and they were embarrassed at times last year. Teams just said, we're just going to shove it down your throat, and there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop it. And for Belichick, a defensive guy, that's insulting. So they went out and they remade that front 7, and through 3 weeks, Miami didn't rush for a ton of yards. But at the end of the game, after the Damian Harris fumble on the 10-yard line, they had a chance to stop him and get the ball back with about a minute and a half to play. And instead, handoff for 5, handoff for 4, handoff for 2, game over. Saints go to the 4-minute offense. It's a one-score game, and the Patriots can't stop them. And then on the touchdown run, the Patriots decided to defend with 10 guys instead of 11. So there's a toughness factor, or the guys aren't playing to the level that they need to play. And there's also been some uncharacteristic mistakes through 3 weeks, which makes you think, and that's the conversation we always have here, because for years and years and years, it was everybody else spending the money in free agency. Oh, they won March and April, but we're going to win in December, January, and February. The Patriots are the team that won March and April. And here they are, 1-2, and playing like a team that's not totally connected at this point.
Mike, I needed to ask you this before you attended, or I should say, before you got your master's degree from the Howard Stern School of Broadcast Journalism at Boston University. You attended Trinity College in
Yes.
Hartford and studied, according to your NFL Network bio, English literature,
Yes.
classical tradition.
Mm-hmm.
What does classical tradition mean, and why do you have a Bob Glauber book behind you?
Well, I have a Glauber book because he pays for that spot on the. He's probably not even happy. I probably need to center it more. Maybe get some lights pointing down on it.
Yeah, classical tradition of English literature. What is that? Is that Shakespeare?
So English Lit was my major. I wrote my thesis on William Faulkner, which actually is funny enough. One of Glauber and I's connections is that he was a big Faulkner guy as well. I think he wrote his thesis on Faulkner in college, which was probably like 1942, but fair enough.
There was a lot more for you to know about Faulkner by the time you did.
Yes. Classical tradition is philosophy, Greek mythology. I'd like to sound really, really smart in this one, but we had a minor. Everyone had to have a minor. And when I got there as a freshman, the buzz was the minor's not going to make it. By the time you're a senior, the minor's not going to be a requirement. So I just took the classes that I wanted, took classes for my major. And then I think it was the second semester of my junior year, it was pretty obvious that the minor thing wasn't going to go away. So I went down the list and was like, well, I took 3 classes in this minor. I only got 1 here. I got none. Is that, you know what? Let's just go with the one we've got the most classes in and let's finish it off. So that's I'd like to sound smarter than I was, but really that was just a cover my own behind and make sure that I graduated on time, because I don't think mom and dad were giving me any more money.
What's the other book back there? You got a Glauber and a what?
I got The Blueprint, which is Chris Price.
Oh,
who wrote,
of course.
Really a fabulous book about the Patriots in the 2000s. I think at the time Sports Illustrated called it one of the 5 best sports books of that year. And then just randomly, it's a completely bizarre book. It's a fiction book by Alan Folsom, The Day After Tomorrow. I read it every year. I don't know. It's just very entertaining to me.
What is it?
Yeah, so it's an American doctor who his parents were killed when he was a boy, and it turns into this big thing, and it's a secret society. And I'm really not a fiction reader, but for some reason, that book spoke to me, and I read there's a follow-up to it. I read the follow-up to it as well.
All right, last bookshelf question. What's with the Syracuse helmet?
My father, class of 64, I believe, played football.
Right, I'll allow it.
Played football for Ben Schwartzwalder, and a little shout out to Pops.
Right on.
Yeah.
How good?
We also have a Johnny Pesky autographed Red Sox baseball.
Okay, so Johnny Pesky. Have you ever interviewed Johnny Pesky?
Oh yeah.
He may be the greatest interview of all time. A great player, number one.
Yeah.
A great player. He was always available. He was brilliant in his storytelling, and he loved to do it. And I interviewed him. I was probably 23. My first time at Fenway Park. I was sent there by the Boston Herald to do a story. The Massachusetts High School Athletic Association was eliminating, which is strange to think, but this would have been 93, 94, was eliminating smokeless tobacco. You think,
right.
They're high school kids, right?
Right.
But because it was baseball, it was kind of, you could look the other way. The coaches did it, the players do it. And so it was kind of not a controversy, but I went down there and talked to Johnny Pesky. He didn't know who I was, about the tradition or the aspect of tobacco in baseball. And it was probably one of my first interviews with a famous player, and not a high school kid or a college kid on his way up or who wasn't famous yet. And it might be number 1 still, all these years later. He was amazing.
So we went to his house later in his life. It might have been a couple of years before he passed away, and did a sit down in his house. And I mean, we probably did 40 minutes on camera, but we probably spent 2.5 hours there. He took us into his basement, and he had memorabilia like you would not believe. Ted Williams stuff, like just he's like, you can't show any of this stuff because I don't want someone to come rob my house. I mean, it was really there's probably millions of dollars worth of memorabilia in that basement. But just a wonderful guy. When Ted Williams passed, I was actually on vacation, and I get the call from my station, and there was a home game, and like, can you come? I'm like, yep, absolutely. So I go up there, and he was like the first person I saw when I came into the facility at Fenway, and I almost ended up like holding him up. He was just, I mean, they were teammates, they were brothers essentially, and I'll never sort of forget that moment. Like Johnny was an open book, and it struck me, here I am, some 20 something or early 30 something kid, and he's leaning on me for physical support and almost emotional support. And it wasn't like we were best friends or anything. He needed a hug basically. So I gave him one.
Great dude. Well,
yeah,
you're a
really
great
was.
dude too for being there for the guy.
I try, mom and dad, they did all right. They raised me well most of the time.
Well, that's what you say.
That's true.
We're just gonna have to take your word for it. Mike, what else do you want to mention? Anything going on that's that has your interest, but we're not talking about because it's all eclipsed by Tom Brady coming back to Foxborough? Oh, how about this?
Well, you know what I want to say specifically, because you are obviously Buffalo based. I can't. When you consider where that franchise has been for the last 20 years, I can't say enough about Brandon Beane and Sean, Brian, Leslie, the job that they've done building that football team, the culture that they've built. And you're even seeing now, like, obviously there were some questions that I'm sure, I know you debated quite a bit on this podcast and elsewhere about the vaccine and what was going on with the team. And I think people were wondering, is that going to be a fatal flaw for the football team? And I guess it could still be with guys not being vaccinated, but just that there seems to be a really good bond with that group. And it was fun to be around it, last year as it finally, the seeds really took root and you had this great success. And I just think that they're poised for a good long run here. I mean, it really, from top to bottom, the way it's gone has been incredibly well done and very impressive.
Yeah, I think COVID is the biggest concern, and it probably is for all the teams, because any good team, it's just that variable. You can't control it. The protocols, the way that they are, it could bite you. All right, how about maybe we should add this then to the conversation. You now regret adding something because we were about to sign off.
No, I'm
Chiefs.
good.
Obviously the Ravens. So the Ravens maybe are looking a little bit better than we thought, even though they were a good team and everybody, looked at them as, I guess, is that maybe the best division in football right now? The AFC. Well, no.
NFC
Okay,
West.
I'm talking myself out of it. That's my medication. Yeah. That's my medication kicking in there, Mike. So anyway, the Kansas City Chiefs. Do you worry about them?
Well, look, I think the way that they.
Wait, let me rephrase that question, because that could be taken either way. Do you think they've something's happened to them that they've tailed off? I don't mean do you worry about them if they are your opponent. Obviously Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and all that stuff. You still got to worry about them. But what I'm saying is the aspect of
I don't think their defense is any good. I don't think their defense is any good. And I think it's been a problem for them. They have some good players on that defense, but I don't think they've consistently played good defense, even in the year they won the Super Bowl. So I don't know how that gets better. I mean, I guess there's some youth on that team, and maybe some of those younger players, some of those younger linebackers, they progress and they become good players, and that will help strengthen that group. But I think as a whole, you move Chris Jones out of position because you're looking for something more. So to me, I think you actually weakened a strength by moving him, because I don't think he's been as disruptive as he was prior to. I think they're going to be a team that is going to have to do what with Patrick. They're going to have to outscore. And, he's awesome. There's no, I can't, if you gave me a quarterback, I'm probably taking him, considering the age and all that. But he does some stupid things, and the no-look pass for the interception against the Chargers, there was no reason to make a no-look pass. And he threw it a little bit behind him. And if he's looking at him, maybe he throws it right on him, and so, we just we were cavalier with the football. We just gave you the ball back because we wanted to be cute and do a no-look pass. We love it. We eat it up when it happens and it works. But then, okay, the flip side is it didn't work, so he needs to be ripped for it. Like, how about you just make the throw? You can make all the throws. Just make the throw. Save that stuff for practice. Save that stuff for when you're up 35-7 and you're playing the Jets and you're not worried that they're going to go on a 31 point streak on you and take away the game. Just, I think maybe pick your poison there at the right time.
Yeah, that's what you get with the Patrick Mahomes. It's why, and it's Josh Allen too. If you remember the highlight of him rolling right against the Dolphins and then throwing to the opposite, practically,
yes,
beyond the goalpost anyway, to the almost to the opposite corner of the end zone for Stephon Diggs. Thankfully, the defensive back fell down. But those are the plays where you're holding your breath and you're thinking that is not something you want to get in the habit of doing, or have it get in your memory bank of, oh, I can do that.
Right. Right.
Yeah, you can do it maybe 1 out of 5 times.
Hey, a great quote from Jameis Winston, of all people, this week. Jameis Winston said, just because you can make all the throws doesn't mean you should make all the throws, right? I can do it. I have the arm. Some of these guys, Josh's arm is ridiculous. Pat's
Jameis
arm
really is the
ridiculous.
21st century Johnny Pesky.
Yeah, he really is. He's a wisdom guy. But like, don't do it. Just don't do it. There was a debate here after the first 2 weeks of the Patriots that Mac Jones isn't pushing the ball down the field. It's like, hey, he's completing 74% of his passes. It's pretty good. Like, let's just, if it takes 14 plays to go down the field, take 14 plays. Let's take the top off the defense nonsense. Everybody wants this guy that can throw the ball through the wall and throw it 75 yards down the field. They don't have to do that to win a football game.
Yeah, maybe that's the danger in the AFC East. You see Josh Allen doing it, and you want one of those.
Right. That's a debate here. Tim is like, oh, well, maybe they should have, despite Mac having some decent success early, like you kind of want that mobile guy. Like, look, to me, when you're playing quarterback, at the end of the day, when you're playing a good team, which you're going to play in the playoffs, they're going to figure out a way to keep you in the pocket. And you're going to have to beat them from the pocket. So you're going to have to beat them with your mind and your accuracy. And it's nice when guys can run around and do all these sorts of things. But for Lamar Jackson, at some point, Lamar, if you're going to win a Super Bowl, you're going to have to do it from standing in that pocket and not being one of the most amazing athletes we've ever seen a quarterback, because someone will have a plan to keep you right where you are. And that's when you're going to have to beat them with the other things.
Last question, real quick, because I know you've been generous with your time here, Mike. We didn't mention it. Western New York's very own Rob Gronkowski also making his return and maybe getting overlooked a little bit because obviously Brady's Brady, but is there anything to the Gronkowski homecoming here?
To me, there is, because I think there is less. My feeling is there's less love for Rob than there is for Tom. Considerably less,
because he skipped out on him for a little bit?
I think there is a portion of the fan base, at least, and certainly in the sports radio realm, of he quit on the football team. He didn't want to do it anymore. He made it publicly pretty clear that he didn't enjoy playing for Bill anymore, that it was no longer fun for him. And then for him to come back and say, oh, I'm coming back, I'm going to go play with Tom, you're going to have to trade me. You might as well get something for me, because otherwise I'm going to stay retired. And then for him to go on and help them win a title, and he's got 4 touchdown catches already in the first 3 weeks of the season. I think there is a little bit like, we embraced you, we loved your nonsense, your frat boy humor and all that stuff, and obviously loved the way he played. I mean, he's the best tight end I ever have seen in person.
The best of all time.
Yeah, I mean, just an absolute monster. But I think there are a portion of the fan base that says you hosed us, and I don't know that he's going to be embraced quite like Tom's going to be embraced.
I just want to mention real quick for people out there listening. So this is what you think of Rob Gronkowski, or this is what Western New York sports writers in the fantasy football league that all of the Bills writers are in. Rob Gronkowski was not drafted.
Whoa.
Yours truly picked him up off waivers during the opening game while he's going off. You were able to, he couldn't be in my roster that week, there's a waiver. I still had to get a little lucky on the waiver pickup. But yeah, Rob Gronkowski. And because you think, same thing. Like the same thing. It's the betting. He's fallen apart. He's at that age, and however many tight ends they have down there in Tampa, they have 3 good ones. And Rob still looks like Rob, although that means he's only going to play 12 games. But
yeah, but I mean, if Rob is playing like Rob, then whatever you get, if you get 10 games, but you have him in January and February, then I think you're in a good place. And you know what? I see. I have a great affinity for Rob. I always enjoyed my interactions with him. I thought it was difficult to watch him at the end here because you could see the conflict within him. You could hear it. He wasn't that same bubbly personality. He wasn't joking with us as much. He gave some press conferences at the podium where we're just like, "Wow, that was depressing." You're like, I feel bad. I felt bad for him, knowing physically that and apparently mentally at that point, he was completely fried. So I am happy that he sort of seems like he's back to being himself and is having success on the field. So I personally didn't like the way he handled it at the end, but I don't really hold any, I can't hold any animosity against him because I just think he's a solid dude who never really kind of forgot who he was and who he is.
Mike Giardi, thank you for doing this. I've really enjoyed it. I didn't know we'd talk about Johnny Pesky. There's a lot of things came up today. So I think we did keep it a little light. Hope this is not what you get from Andrew Siciliano that often.
No.
I enjoyed it. He never asks you about your father.
He doesn't.
He doesn't care.
He doesn't ask me about Johnny Pesky. He doesn't ask me about the classical tradition. I got to come up with a better story for that, though, right? I should embellish.
A thesis on Faulkner is pretty heavy duty, man.
I was actually trying to find it because whatever, I've got papers in the attic everywhere, and I was going through some of my stuff that just unload. I'm like, I don't need all this stuff, and I was like, but I want to find the thesis because I'm so far removed from it. I don't even remember what the hell I wrote, but I'd like to go back and see Mike Giardi's thoughts on William Faulkner 20 some odd years ago.
Do you care about William Faulkner anymore? Like since
no.
you did that thesis, have you done any more like studying up or reading some obscure piece of work that he did that you didn't before?
Well, the professor that I had for a large portion of my English lit classes, Professor Dirk Kirk, Kuyk, just passed away probably within the last couple of years. And my roommate, who was also an English guy, we used to joke that he was Faulkner. Like he knew so much and he was a Southern guy. So like, we were like, he might be William.
That's a pretty ballsy thing for you to write your thesis on Faulkner with the guy that you feel is the expert on Faulkner now.
Yeah. And look, my first experience with him, we had a quick story.
Should have done like J.K. Rowling or something
Right.
That was a little, you might have threw a couple change-ups past him.
I'll give you a quick story. So we were playing it must be my sophomore year. We're playing Bowdoin at Bowdoin. So the bus is leaving on Friday at like 12:30 because we got to practice on the way to Bowdoin. Whatever. I don't even remember where we stopped and practiced. So I went to class completely unprepared. Mentally, I was ready to play a football game, excited to go up to Bowdoin. And I, for whatever reason, decided to sit in the front row. Maybe I thought I would be overlooked if I was in the front row. And he's talking and he's asking questions and nobody's jumping in. And then he looks at me and he's like, Mike, why don't you answer this? And I'm looking at him. I gave it the 5-second pause. And I'm like, I'm just going to own it. Professor, I'm behind on the reading. I'm a good 100 pages behind on the reading. He turns to my buddy, Justin, the other kid. Justin. He's like, I'm with him. Finger gun. Bang, bang. Get out. I grabbed my crap. I ran out that door. My roommate, Justin's like, okay, fine. He grabs his stuff and, on a bus to Bowdoin. And then that Monday I had to make sure that I found him in his office hours and was like, look, won't happen again. And then we had respect for each other after that. I mean, I had respect for him anyway, but clearly not enough to do the reading. So, yeah. Then I wrote a thesis.
Shame.
I know.
But you're making up with it with all the Glauber reading any man can handle. And you're a trooper.
He's got another book coming out, right? You know,
I've got that book. I've got the book that's behind you there. I've got it signed. He signed it. He actually gave one to my Make-A-Wish Foundation fundraiser that I do.
Very nice.
It was very nice of him to do. So I actually at one point had two. What's he doing? What's the next one though?
He's got the one with Keyshawn Johnson.
Oh,
that
right.
Just came out, right?
Yeah, that's been out for a couple weeks, right?
Yeah. They featured it on the Fox game the other day, and they were handing it out in the Rams locker room. And I didn't get a copy though. He didn't send me a copy. Apparently, he wants me to pay for it.
At some point, people have to start paying for this thing. He can't just give them away.
Hey, his kids
Somebody's
are out of
gotta buy
college.
'em.
His kids are out of college now, Tim. I mean, what does he need the cash for?
He does. This is his leisure time.
That's right.
Mike Giardi from NFL Network. Thanks for doing this.
Tim, thanks for having me.
CTBK is more than just a full-service accounting firm. They are one team with an innovative approach to accounting and rise to each new challenge with collaborative problem-solving skills. CTBK goes above and beyond by lending helping hands in the Buffalo and Niagara community through volunteer work and donations, and is partnered up with Victory Sports for 2020 and 2021 to keep kids in the community active. The professionals at CTBK are determined to help individuals and businesses succeed. Whether a large corporation, a small business, or somewhere in between, call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400, and see what CTBK's one-team approach can do for you.